Welcome back to the Eagles Power Hour. This is Kyler Neal, your host, like always. Took a little bit of a break last week just because, if you guys don't know anything, I about my life, I guess. So I kind of work in the hurricane industry. The summer's pretty brutal, always really busy. It makes it extremely tough to get some time. I work 6 days a week, random times from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Left my house at 7 a.m. today, got back around 8:30. It's been pretty brutal, but still want to record because this is a big time game. But then also I'm getting ready to sell my home. So on any little bit of the free time I have, now we're working on doing the home, trying to watch a little bit of football, of course, and then working. It is a very, very hectic time in my household, but that's not your problem. It's my problem. And I still need to get out as much content as possible. So that's just kind of what's going on in my neck of the world. But it's football season. We're going to talk Eastern Washington football. We had two games. Then we are playing the Kittens from Bozeman. So that's kind of the agenda today. But before we break into that, let's kind of go around the big sky. Let's look at what's going on around the big sky, see what's happening, see who's been looking really good, see who's been looking not so great, kind of analyze some of the schedules or at least some key pieces so then you guys can stay up to date. Before I look at the big sky, I just want to say we are a part of the FCS Fans Nation network. We're a part of the Big Sky Podcast Network. So, I mean, if you want any type of content, if it's FCS in general, go to our FCS Fans Nation YouTube page. You can check out so many great podcasts: Jackrabbit Illustrated, Around the Way Sun, the Wax Sun Weekly. I think that's what it's called now. Weber State Weekly. There's just too many to name. That's kind of a mixture of the FCS Fans Nation Network and the Big Sky. So you got Fight on Montana plus the Grizz Fan Podcast, right? You're not going to find both on YouTube, but if you on YouTube, Fight on Montana is there. But the Grizz Fan Podcast does a phenomenal job. If you like Montana Grizzlies, R&R Podcast on the Big Sky Network, you can look at them. They're at Montana State. Then you got Tubbs at the Club, Weber State Weekly, like I said, NAU and the Big Sky Podcast Show. There's just too many shows. There's so much great content in the FCS that we did not have just a few seasons ago. So it's been pretty fun to be a part of this. But yeah, that's kind of my plug. Go find whatever you want. And if you're trying to find something and we don't have it or you can't find it, shoot me a message. If you shoot me a message, hopefully I'll at least have some type of recommendation for you. If not, well, then maybe you should build that podcast yourself and join one of our networks. All right. So that's my shameless plug of the day. Now let's kind of look into the Big Sky schedule. So I'm going to share my screen here. If you're watching, awesome. If not, well, jump on YouTube and kind of look at it. So hopefully you guys can see this. I wonder if I need to make it a little bit bigger. There. So now it's a little bit bigger. You can probably see. So here's the Big Sky Conference standings now. A lot of out-of-conference games have been played. There's very imbalanced scheduling across the Big Sky, so it's hard to gauge some teams than other teams. You could probably have a good assumption of where they're at. So we have Montana at 3-0. They did play 3 FCS programs. 2 of them really bad FCS programs. They played Indiana State from the Missouri Valley, who's been horrible. But they did play South Dakota. So South Dakota was a playoff team last year. This is not the Jackrabbits. This is not South Dakota State, the elite of the elite, but still a really good team out of the Missouri Valley. And Montana looked dominant. I mean, they struggled a little bit on offense, but overall, they still won by 3 touchdowns or something similar to that. So when you see this, their points for, points against, looks like they found a quarterback in Lucas Johnson. We'll preview Montana right before we play them, so I don't want to dive too much into these teams, but I'm just going to give you my assessment on, do they look good? Do they look bad? Who have they kind of played to give you some of these opinions? Montana looks really good. I think I've had that at number 2 in my rankings all season long. It's probably not going to change unless they start to really slump or have a loss somewhere. Weber State, 3-0 again. Now, they played a Division II team. That's not their fault. They did have James Madison on the schedule, but as we all know, as you're an FCS fan, James Madison, they jumped up to the FBS, left Weber State with a vacant spot, and they had to get a last-minute replacement. They dominated that team like normal. Then they played Utah State, formerly known as Dixie. They dominated them again. This was not a close game, but the cool thing about Weber, maybe not cool. Maybe I don't want to use the word cool. The impressive thing about Weber, that's a better word. The impressive thing about Weber was what they did to Utah State. Utah State was the number one team in the Mountain West last year. I think they went 11-1 or 10-2, is something like that, but they were dominant. Weber State beat the crap out of them. I mean, I don't have the score in front of me. I think it was like 38-7 or something. Maybe not that. But I don't think they gave up an offensive touchdown. I think they gave up a return. But yeah, their defense is phenomenal. Their offense is clicking. That young quarterback, Barron, who kind of struggled, he looked good. Now, if you listen to the FCS Fans Nation podcast, what some people refer to as the big boy show on the podcast network, which is not true. There's much better podcasts than what me, Jamie, and Matthew Frazee do. But all preseason long on our episodes, I have kind of said, I think Weber State is going to be much better than what people perceive them as last year. I even said I think they're going to be better than Montana State, and they're going to go deeper in the playoffs than Montana State. And Montana State's coming off a national title appearance. Most people thought I was on drugs. But I was saying, you guys, if you don't follow the Big Sky or don't follow Weber, for one, they had one of the most brutal schedules in all the FCS last year, right? They went 6-5. Also, what a lot of people don't know, they had so many injuries. Josh Davis, their superstar running back, he was not healthy for most of the season. Then they were down to their third string quarterback for half the season. When they got healthy, not even 100%, but when they started getting healthy halfway through the season, which is weird, that's normally where you get your injuries. They were the opposite. They were getting healthier at the end of the season. They started playing teams really tough. They beat Eric Berrier and held him to 200 yards. They went toe-to-toe with Montana State in a very close slugfest defensive battle. It was a 3-point game or something like that. They beat everyone that they were supposed to once they got healthy, besides Portland State. That was a weird game. Portland State wasn't that great, but they played their best game against Weber. Weber didn't play that great. Other than that, Weber State looked fantastic last year when they were healthy, and they look way better than they did last year. Their schemes look better. The offense looks better. The running back looks healthy. Barron looks way more competent. They don't have that speedster return man, but they still got athletes on the outside. They still got dudes who can burn you. They look really good, really balanced. Their run defense, absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. They look extremely scary. I think they have to be rated in the top 5 of the FCS. I mean, they've given up 26 points. Again, Montana's only given up 21, but Weber State also has played one more difficult team than anyone Montana's played. Other than that, a pretty easy out-of-conference schedule. But that Utah State game can't take away anything from that. Mountain West power, they absolutely crushed them. Sac State, they are 2-0. They played Utah Tech, who threw all over them, which was kind of weird. And then they played the Missouri Valley, consistent top 5 team, top 4 team in Northern Iowa, who's always a playoff team. And it was a fun game for 3 quarters. It was a little bit back and forth. Sac State, they jumped out to a lead. It looked like they were going to dominate. Northern Iowa came back. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, Sac State just really pulled it away. Sac State looks really dynamic this year. Their offense looks like they could do whatever they want. Their defense looks like there could be some issues in the passing department. Like Northern Iowa's not a good passing team. Utah Tech couldn't really do much against Weber in the passing game, but they were able to throw, I think it was like 500 yards against Sac State. So keep an eye out on Sac State. They do play Colorado State this week, and I think that's a game that they could easily upset. Colorado State hasn't looked good. They lost to Middle Tennessee State by like 14. I think they're 0-3. And this was the same Colorado State team that just got dominated by South Dakota State last year. It didn't even look like they were in the same caliber of program. And Colorado State is a league above, right? They're in the Mountain West and the FBS. They just got torched. So I think that's a game to watch for this week for upset alert. We're going to kind of look at some of the games as well and preview. Then you got Montana State. we'll preview them, so I don't want to do too much. Eastern Washington, you already know about that. We'll look at them as well. Cal Poly, they haven't looked that great. They're 1-2. Their one win was against San Diego. That's a Pioneer League non-scholarship team, a good Pioneer League team. But if you are anyone other than maybe the bottom two in the, I guess maybe bottom three, since Cal Poly went toe to toe with them and barely escaped. If you're anything above the bottom three, you should not be having any competitive teams versus Pioneer League. There's no scholarships. There's the top half of the D2, I think, would run through them. So it is what it is. Cal Poly, your quarterback play looks quite a bit improved, but you still have a long ways to go. Hopefully, Bo Baldwin can turn it around, because now you're on that third year of Bo Baldwin. You played in the spring halfway. You played last year, didn't look good. You do look improved this year. Is it enough? I'm not sure. Idaho is weird. Idaho, they're 1-2. You know, they played a really good game against Washington State. And Washington State, I don't know if you know this, but they just beat 2 weeks ago the number 18 team in Wisconsin. Washington State should be ranked. They're still not. Either is Oregon State. That's insane. Washington State should be ranked, and Idaho went toe-to-toe with them and even probably could have came out with a win. They lost by 7. Then they went over to Indiana, who blew them out last year. It wasn't even competitive. They went toe-to-toe. I think they led at halftime, and then all of a sudden, the second half, the depth just kind of took over, and Indiana ended up winning pretty convincingly, I think by like 17 or something like that, but like it was respectable. Idaho looked really good against Indiana, and then they played Drake. Now, Drake's in the same league as San Diego, non-scholarship. The difference is San Diego is a lot better than Drake. Drake is one of the worst teams in the FCS. And at halftime, Drake was only down by 7 versus Idaho. It was competitive. We were like, all right, they played extremely good the first 2 games. They looked really improved. And then you watch this game and you're like, ooh, at halftime, what is going on? I watched it. P.S. Idaho, fix your feed. What color schemes are you doing? Drake is blue. Their helmets are blue, and on TV it looked green. The field of Idaho looked gray. Whatever you tried to do with your filtering for your color, stop it. It looked pathetic. But really weird game because they went toe-to-toe with Drake in the first half. 14-20, 14-21, something like that. Then all of a sudden, Idaho just took it to them, won how they were supposed to in the second half, completely dominated them in the second half. But this is the same Drake team that NDSU played. NDSU, I think they played 1 drive in the third quarter with their starters, then everyone was gone. What Idaho beat Drake by was the same score that NDSU had at halftime. So, again, I don't know how to gauge this Idaho team. Play really tough against 2 FBS teams, look super impressive. One half look really bad against Drake. I know when you listen to Tubbs at Club, they say it's only 1 quarter. They didn't look great even in the second quarter. They looked great in the second half, but again, it's Drake. They're non-scholarship, and they're a bad non-scholarship team. This is a team that Central Washington would beat by 30. I really do believe that. So it's weird. Idaho definitely looks improved. There's more hype around them. I love what X is doing over there. He's a former South Dakota State offensive coordinator. I think Idaho is going to be good. I don't know what they're going to be this year. Few years, watch out. They're gonna compete for Big Sky titles in a few years if they can get some of that tight end talent that X is known for grabbing and some of those running backs and improve the line play. But overall, yeah, Idaho looks like a mid-tier Big Sky team who can beat some of the really good teams and maybe lose to some of the bottom. I'm not sure yet, but overall, Idaho fans, you got to be happy. With Petrino, you wouldn't even been close in those 2 FBS games. At least there's some fire and some fight under this team. So it's going to be interesting to see. NAU got crushed by Arizona State, which is fine. Now, Arizona State looks really bad. They just lost. Who did they lose to? They lost to a bad FBS team, like a G5 team, a bad one. And it just got Erm Edwards fired. So there's been so much chaos at Arizona State. I guess if you're a P5 team and you're playing NAU, you're going to get fired real soon. So it is interesting. They didn't look good the first game, but who cares? It's a P5 game. I get it. But then they looked really good against Sam Houston. Like really good against Sam Houston. Not offensively. This NAU team looks different than years past. Their defense looks pretty darn good. Their offense looks pretty lackluster. But they lost 10-3. Sam Houston didn't score a touchdown. They shut them down. They shut them out. It was impressive what NAU was able to do. If you had to tell me before the game NAU won, I would have said, wow, was it like a 52-48 type of game? Complete opposite, 10-3, something like that. It was fun to watch. And then they played North Dakota, not North Dakota State, not the Bison, but they played the Fighting Hawks, who's a top 25 team. And they were in the game all the way. They led. North Dakota kind of came back at the very end, and NAU had a chance to win, but they ended up losing by 2. So NAU is just on the outside of the top 25. Idaho is just on the outside of the top 25. Montana, Weber, Sac State, Montana State, Eastern Washington within the top 25. UC Davis, or I guess Northern Colorado, they look bad. I don't know what to say about them. They have, in my opinion, the easiest out-of-conference schedule. The 2 easiest games that they have on their schedule, and they split them. They played Houston Baptist, now known as Houston Christian University. That should have been a win easily for Northern Colorado, but Ed McCaffrey decided, I want to keep playing my son instead of the better quarterback, which is the backup Sermons. They didn't do it, so they lost their first 2 games. And then what did they do? The 3rd game against Lamar, they played the backup. They won. Good job. So Northern Colorado, stick with that. Stick with that quarterback. Do not start Ed McCaffrey's son ever again. Dylan is not the guy. But you have talent on that team, so it's going to be interesting to see what Northern Colorado can do. But yeah, they just really don't look that good. UC Davis got a weird little schedule going. They played Cal, lost. It wasn't like a blowout. It wasn't a miserable loss. Then they played at South Dakota State. Now, South Dakota State, number 2 team in the nation in the polls. Maybe number 3 now. I think Montana just jumped them. But we all know South Dakota State. Fantastic team. Dominant team. It was a fun game. I mean, South Dakota State kind of jumped out. They were dominating pretty early, right? But then it's kind of all started falling apart. I mean, for one, UC Davis's defense looked fantastic in that game. I don't think South Dakota State's offense looked good at all throughout the whole game. They ended up losing by 2. UC Davis did. But at the end, like that Q4, because I think South Dakota State was up by like 14 going into Q4. And all of a sudden, UC Davis, Miles Hastings, just starts picking apart a very gassed and tired defensive secondary. Started picking them apart, all of that stuff. They were doing a really good job. They still ended up losing in a very close game. Couldn't quite seal the deal, but UC Davis looks pretty tough. Portland State, it is what it is. They played close against San Jose State. Portland State has a history of playing close games versus the FBS, and it makes people think that they're really good, right? They played good and competitive with Hawaii. And these are all like within the last 6 years or so. A good competitive game versus Hawaii. A pretty decent game against Washington State last year. They lost to San Jose by 4 this year. They beat Washington State a few years back in 2015. They beat Texas State 66-7, some ridiculous number. But then they also went toe-to-toe with, who was it? I know in the 2017 season, they played Arkansas. They went toe-to-toe with Arkansas, 3-point game. Yeah, they have a history of playing these really competitive games versus FBS teams and then, going 4-4 in the Big Sky or less. So people think they're really good. I don't see it. They got blown out by UW, and that's fine. I get it. UW looks pretty good this year. They should have got blown out. But I'm not putting too much stock in that San Jose win. So we'll have to see. They have a D2 team next, I believe. So we're not going to learn much about Portland State until they get into conference play. Idaho State. What more to say about Idaho State? They're really bad. They played Central Arkansas. That's a team out of the A-Sun. Central Arkansas put it to them. There was a couple like drives in the first half where we're like, all right, Idaho State, it looks like they could be promising. Nope, they just don't look very good. So that's kind of around the Big Sky. Let me see here. Let's see if we can pull up the schedule. I think I had it just not too long ago. Okay, so this is the schedule this week. Of course, we're not going to talk about Montana State, Eastern Washington yet. That'll be later. But what Tubbs of the Clubs is calling the Toilet Bowl. We have Idaho State versus Northern Colorado. Woof. I mean, this is a game versus the two worst teams in the conference. Let's pick it. I think when Chris Hammond and I were kind of looking through the rosters, I just think Northern Colorado has a better roster than Idaho State. Idaho State has a lot of big dudes. I mean, you could even see that when they were playing Central Arkansas, who doesn't have a small line. Idaho State has a really big offensive line, a couple 6'7", 6'8" guys that are like 330, 320. Really big offensive line, really lacks skill position players. I like Northern Colorado's linebacker. I like their transfer from WSU at the wide receiver spot. They do have Elijah Doxson. He was at Sacramento State running back who was all Big Sky honors. I know he didn't do anything last year for Sac State, so that's kind of why he transferred. It's a weird transfer, but he hasn't really done much this year at Northern Colorado either. But I still like Northern Colorado's roster a little bit better. This next one, really fun. These are those two teams that were in the bottom half in the preseason picks, and they're kind of emerging themselves, and they both look really improved. Both look really good on defense too, which is pretty weird to say because last year they were both horrible on defense. They both look really good on defense to start the year. Idaho at Northern Arizona. I think I'm going to go with Idaho. I think it's going to be a fun game, a 7-point game, but I think I'm going to go with Idaho probably in like a 27-20 game, something around there. So yeah, give me Idaho. Portland State at Montana. No chance Portland State's going to be competitive. Maybe for a half because for some reason Bobby Houck loves Bruce Barnum and loves Portland State. And Skyline News from Montana always says Portland State's amazing, all because they beat them in 2018 one time. Just Portland State is not as good as people make them out to believe. Montana is that good. It's not going to be competitive. Give me Montana 38, Portland State 14. Something like that. Yeah, I like Montana a lot in this game. Sacramento State versus Colorado State. We already kind of talked about this. I think Colorado State sucks. Flat out sucks. I think if they were in the Big Sky, they'd be a bottom half team. Obviously, Sac State, they're a two-time Big Sky champion back-to-back, 2019 and 2021, because they did not play in 2020. They look good. There's still some question marks, like why did they give up 500 yards to Utah Tech in that first game? But they still beat them pretty handily. So, yeah, give me Sac State in this game. Then you got a really fun one in Weber State, UC Davis. This is kind of that who's who prove it game. Is UC Davis the same team that went toe-to-toe with South Dakota State? Is Weber still the same team that just dominated Utah State and won the Big Sky 4 years in a row? I don't know. For some reason, I think this is a lot like that 2018 schedule. Both teams look really good. Both teams have potential, but they avoided each other in 2018. Eastern got to play both of them. They didn't get to play each other, and we all split the conference title. So I love that this game is being played. It's being played down in Davis. That makes it interesting. It's a nighttime game. So it's a 10 p.m. game for – oh, never mind. I was looking at my time. It's not that late for you guys on the West Coast. But I was going to say, wow, that's a 10 p.m. game for Weber. But no, it's an 8 p.m. game for Weber. So still not super late. You know, they're kids. They'll be able to be awake and ready. But still a later game than what you'd probably want. I'll definitely be tuning into that one. Give me Weber State. I've been too high on them. I can't pick them to lose when I've just been touting how good they are, all of that stuff. So here we go. Let's kind of look at Eastern Washington and what they've done so far. Really weird conference schedule. Really weird or out of conference schedule. Really tough, brutal schedule to begin with. So of course we played Tennessee State. I did not get to give my review on that game. Most people who don't follow the FCS just don't know what Tennessee State's been doing when Eddie George has got in. So they're a 500 team out of the OVC last year. All of a sudden this year they get an OVC quarterback All-American transfer. They already had an All-American running back. They had 15 transfers altogether throughout their program this offseason. Some of them were drop-down starters from P5 programs. I mean, what the type of talent Eddie George is bringing in is insane. They're not there yet. This was a fun game. This is, in my opinion, going to be the third most athletic roster we will play all season. That's what some people just don't realize. I think they are a more athletic roster than what we'll see in the Big Sky. I think that they have a lot of talent. They're just Eddie George needs a few more years to figure out how to coach. And I don't mean to say that as a disrespectful guy, because look, he almost beat us, but they were much faster than us. They were more elusive than us. They were more athletic than us. And Eastern still kind of dominated. I mean, if you look at the stats, if you look at the scoreboard, it doesn't show that. But we left about 17 points off the board. We missed a field goal, dropped a really easy touchdown. It wasn't really a drop. It was a easy little overthrow where Gunner just missed his guy, and he wasn't missing many guys that game. He missed his guy in the end zone. We didn't capitalize on that drive. And then we had that weird 1 hour rain delay halfway through our drive, which just stalled momentum because we just got a first down. Then it was like 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7. And then all of a sudden there's an hour rain delay. We had to come back and we just came out super slow. We had a 10-point lead, came out just ridiculous on that to try and finish that drive. And Tennessee State scored. I mean, they took it back. It made it competitive at the end, but we led for 3.5 quarters. I mean, it is what it is. We should have been up by more than 10.5. It happens. It is what it is. We fought back. We got the stops we needed to. They turned over the ball 3 times, and it wasn't just because they were dropping. Eastern Washington was hitting them. We were playing the right plays. We were being aggressive. We were being physical. It was fun. So, yeah, I think I predicted it to be a 7 to 10 point win. It's kind of what we did, and it would have been 10 if we had the field goal, but we missed. So the odds makers who were saying this was going to be a blowout, yeah, it's just because you don't follow the FCS. Chris Hammond has been super high on Tennessee State. If you listen to, in my opinion, the best podcast about the FCS and probably the most knowledgeable one or one of them, the Blue Bloods. What he's doing over there is amazing. He's been super high on Tennessee State too. I think they're a top 3 team in the OVC. They're not going to be in the playoffs. They're a few years away, but they are better than what their record shows. They're 0-3, but in terms of out of conference schedules, they played a top 10 team in Jackson State. And Jackson State has scored 60 points on the other 2 teams that they've played. Jackson State couldn't get, I think they ended the game with 19 points. So Tennessee State's defense played phenomenal against Jackson State, but Jackson State also has the number 1 recruit in the nation in Travis Hunter. He's a DB. He could have went to literally any school. He was the number 1 recruit in the nation. He's making an immediate impact. That is a very good defense from Jackson State, and they held Tennessee State to 3. So that's where you have some like positives and concerns. They shut down, for the most part, Jackson State's offense, who is the most talented roster in the FCS. Outside of maybe South Dakota State, that has tons of NFL talent, but across the board, Jackson State has to have the most talent in the FCS. And they shut them down for the most part. So it's weird. Our offense looked much better than Jackson State. Jackson State's defense looked much better than us. Okay. And then there's nothing to take away from the Oregon game. It happens. I mean, we've been blown out by teams when we went to a national title. In 2010, we got blown out by, what was it, Nevada? It wasn't close. In 2018, we got blown out by Washington State. It wasn't close. Didn't Washington State have like 56 points, 57 points against us? In the rest of the FCS, we were averaging less than 18 points a game given up. It happens. This Oregon team, they got embarrassed the week before. They took it out on us. And this is a top 25 team. This is a really good team. I think they're going to beat Washington State this week. That's a really fun game, really good game if you want to tune in. But yeah, they took it out on us. They were even thrown in the 4th. It is what it is. I was pretty happy we scored 14. We rushed actually better than BYU did this last week. We averaged more rushes per carry against Oregon than BYU did, and that was a top 25 team in BYU. They got more talent than us. We didn't look that much worse than BYU offensively. Defensively, sure. We didn't look great, but they didn't look good either. Oregon just kind of, I think they took their foot off the gas at the very end because they kind of dominated in the first half. Then they're like, all right, we're already up. It's cool. They didn't do that versus us. Or if they did, they didn't do it well enough. They were still thrown in the 4th. So I don't think you could take too much away from this Oregon game besides a few positives and a few negatives. One of the negative issues that we saw in the Tennessee game and the Oregon game, really having a tough time tackling. I don't know what it is. I did say in the preseason that the linebacking group was going to be that one where I have some questions. I have some concerns. They haven't done anything to make me happy. They haven't done anything to make me go, oh, that's not a concern for us. Yeah, they don't look good. They're doing a lot of arm tackling. Now, a few things I will say is we are getting to the players pretty quick. Like Tennessee State, their running back had like 200 something yards. We hit him at the line of scrimmage so much. We hit him at 2 yards after the line, behind the line. But we were trying to hit him with a forearm, doing these weird arm tackles. That does not work. He was way too fast, way too athletic, way too agile. He just kept, all right, you put an arm out here, I'm going to run right through it. And we were doing that against Oregon too. We're hitting guys early. We're getting to them fast for the most part. We're just not tackling. I don't know what it is. It was like this last year too, and it looks a little bit worse. That's my big issue about how this defense is playing. I like how aggressive we are. I like how we're going after the ball. I like how we're getting to the offensive guys. Not tackling very well. And we really need to fix that before we go against Montana State, because we're going to kind of talk a little bit about them and kind of their difficulties. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Before we click on our Eastern game, let's look at what Montana State's done. So they had a weird out of conference schedule too, that it makes it hard to know who Montana State is. I don't think you can say that they're bad. I don't think you can say that they're elite. You just don't know. I mean, they kind of did what they were supposed to and did what they weren't supposed to. It is what it is. So against McNeese came out pretty hard. It was a good game in the first half, and then Montana blew them away. Now McNeese is 0-3, kind of just like Tennessee State, but McNeese hasn't played good teams. Tennessee State has played Jackson State, top 10 team in the nation, an FBS team, and then us. Now, if you think we're top 15, then that's what you think. I put us closer to 25 than 15. We could or could not be a top 25 team. We'll know after this Montana State game. But I mean, McNeese hasn't played any good FCS teams besides Montana State. Then you play Morehead State. That's that little eagle right there. Listen, Morehead State and Drake are about the same caliber program. Maybe Morehead State's worse. It's a non-scholarship team. Mercer beat them the exact same way, 63-13. Mercer's a tough team out of the SoCon. They're a top 15 team. So, I mean, they did what a top 15 team did to Morehead State as well. Okay. They looked good. They were running. I think they averaged like 11 yards a carry. It was something ridiculous. They were doing whatever they wanted to Morehead State. I was listening to the R&R guys. They were pretty bummed that Morehead State scored, 13. They were bummed McNeese scored 17, but it happens. It's dominant wins. It is what it is. And then they played Oregon State, who they should be ranked. Just like Washington State when Idaho went toe-to-toe with them, Oregon State should be ranked. And I'm not taking any stock in this game. I don't think this game proves that Montana State's bad. I don't think it proves they have a bad defense. I don't think it proves they have a bad offense. Just like the Oregon game, I don't think it proves anything. I mean, James Madison in 2016, they beat every single FCS team and blew everyone out besides a close game against North Dakota State in the playoffs, and they still won at the Fargo Dome. They dominated the FCS. North Carolina beat the crap out of them. They scored 56. Eastern Washington like I said, in 2018, we got blown out by Washington State. Like I said, we only gave up like 18 points per game. We made it to a national title game. These games don't prove you're bad. Even if you win, it doesn't prove you're good. Southern Illinois, they just beat Big Ten's Northwestern. They were 0-2 versus the FCS before that. And a blowout loss against Incarnate Word, like 60-something to 24. Does that win against Northwestern mean that Southern Illinois is the best team? No. It means we have question marks. This game doesn't prove anything. Montana State looked bad. Eastern looked bad. It is what it is. You can take some positives away. I think that's what you need to look at in these games. Don't judge the negatives. Don't judge how bad you looked. Look at some of the positives. The positives is Oregon State is a top 25 FBS program. They should be. They're not ranked, and it's dumb. They should be a top 25 FBS program. The Pac 12 should have 6 to 7 teams in the top 25 right now. It's ludicrous, but everyone still thinks Pac 12 has been really bad, like they have been in the last few years. So they're not giving them the respect they deserve. Washington State be a top 20 FBS team out of the Big Ten. Still not ranked. Oregon State should be ranked. They should be right up there with Oregon. I don't think they're as good as Oregon, but they should be right up there ranked with Oregon. And they got blown out. It is what it is, but Montana State still scored 28 points. One of them was a kick return, I'm pretty sure a punt return. But then the rest of it, they still scored 21 points offensively, I think. I don't think one of them was a defensive TD. So, yeah, looked impressive. Defensively, they didn't look good. Who cares? It is what it is. We're not Oregon State. They don't have to worry about that. They're not Oregon. We don't have to worry about that. Neither one of our teams has the same talent as Oregon State or Oregon. It's going to be a different game. But yeah, I'm not taking too much away. Here's the fun, impressive things about Montana State versus Oregon State squad. They're down to their 4th string running back. Okay? 4th string running back. Ifanse, he was kind of that killer number 1 running back in the Big Sky, in my opinion. Number 1 returning running back in the FCS. He's injured. He's going through surgery. I don't think he'll be ready till hopefully before playoffs if Montana State can get there. But then they lost in the McNeese game their freshman running back who was a stud, or maybe that was in Moorhead, but he had like 150 yards rushing or something like that against McNeese, freshman. And then they had another injury. They're doing a 2 QB system now with Malott and Chambers. I think it's Chambers. I can't remember his name. I think it's Chambers. They're doing a weird 2 QB system that they did last game for some of the drives where Malott, he's in the backfield. So is this other QB. That's kind of their best running options they have right now. They even have a wide receiver who's running the ball every now and then. They are decimated with running back injuries. All right, so let's preview this game. I don't want to spend too much time. It's already 10 p.m. here, 14-hour day, so some of the stuff I'm saying may not even make sense. I'm exhausted. It is what it is, though. So we have the game. It's in Cheney. I know Montana State fans are kind of bitching that this is the second time that they have to come to Cheney in a row. This stops. It doesn't happen from here on out. So the reason why you have to come 2 in a row, we had such weird unbalanced scheduling when Idaho came in and Southern Utah was still here. Southern Utah left. So now the new scheduling is you have your 2 protected rivalries still. So ours is Montana State and Idaho now. It's not Montana. It's not Portland State. It's Idaho and Montana State, which I'm happy with. I'd much rather play those 2 schools than Portland State. Don't care about the damn cup. I like Idaho. They're real close. I like Montana State because they were a good program, one of the better facilities. They're a fun team to play. I respect the crap out of Montana State, their fan base, their facilities, their school. I think they're phenomenal across the board. They're how a program should be elevating themselves. They're doing everything the correct way. But yeah, so what's going to happen is you're going to play your protected rivalries, one at home, one away each year. So you're not going to play both of them at home. So we're going to Idaho this year. Montana State's coming to us. And then the rest of the league, you're going to play 2 times home and away every 3 years. So it's going to be on a rotational schedule. Every 3 years, you're going to play the same team at least twice, and it's going to be home and away. So hopefully none of these games are ever 2 times in a row. Like we went to Montana multiple times in a row. It took them 4 or 5 years for them to finally come back to us. It was like 2016 and then 2021 last year. That's why we stormed the field. It was excited. We really don't like that team. And we finally got to play them at home again for the first time in 5 years. Yeah, a little excited. We rushed the field on ESPN2. It was fun. But yeah, Montana State, you're not going to have to come to us every year in a row anymore. It's going to be on a rotational schedule, so don't worry. Don't worry. We'll return the visit. But let's look at this game because, again, I don't know how to judge these two teams yet. Montana State has looked pretty good against the teams they were supposed to. They looked pretty bad against a team they weren't supposed to. Yes, the spread was not, they didn't beat the spread, but either has Eastern. It is what it is. You look at Tommy Malott. So he's played 3 games, 548 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 4 touchdowns were against bad teams. The 3 interceptions were against Oregon State. Is he a good passer? I don't think so. I think he can throw the ball, and he has a beautiful fade. Right on the sideline, he can throw this amazing fade 50-50 ball. The rest, it's not the best, but that's not where Tommy Malott's going to beat you. He's only going to beat you. He throws to keep you honest, basically, where a lot of other quarterbacks or something like that, they'll run to keep you honest. He's kind of the opposite. His main weapon is his legs, and he can run. He had 150 yards against Oregon State last week. No touchdowns on the ground. That's where the backup quarterback kind of ran in, but he is a freak athlete with his legs. He has a strong arm, not a very accurate arm. He throws a 50-50 ball pretty well. And he has a wide receiver in Alston who can get the ball. But I mean, Malott, he's not going to beat you with his arm. Now, what he can do, and this is where we have to have a little bit of concern, is he can dink and dive, dink and dump, whatever you want to call it. So if we're given too much cover like what we do every now and then for some teams, if we're given this 10-yard cushion, he can throw 5 yards with the best of them. And you know what happens if you're throwing 5 yards every few, well, you're going down the field. Then he's got the legs to get him the other 5. So, I mean, this is something where I think we got to really put the pressure on their wide receivers. We need to bump them at the line of scrimmage, make them out wide receiver our DBs. We got to make them out physical us. We got to make them blow past us. We got to make them be more athletic than us. If we're hitting them at the line of scrimmage and, not giving Tommy Malott that time to throw, he's going to run. And he's going to run right away. He doesn't look around the field very well, in my opinion, because he trusts his legs, which he should. He's a very good athlete running the ball. He's fantastic. He can run with the best of them. I mean, you can see his stats, 39 carries, 205 yards, and a touchdown. And again, 150 yards of that was against Oregon State, whose defense is very good. He can beat you on his legs. When he played in the national title game this last year against North Dakota State, that first drive, he drove down the field with his legs. Then, unfortunately, he got injured, and we didn't get to see what he was capable of against North Dakota State the rest of the game after that first drive, but he was running. He was driving down the field. He can do that to us, especially like when I said when we were trying to block Tennessee State and trying to tackle him. If we are trying to get Tommy Malott with a forearm, we're not tackling Tommy Malott. We need to hit him square, chest to chest. We need to drive him down, be physical with him, because, if we're giving him cushion, he's going to pick us apart with his little 5-yard throws. Couple screens, whatever he needs to do, a few sweeps, all of that type of jazz. So we need to be physical with the wide receivers, but we need to put a spy on him, follow him everywhere, and then do not let up. Do not try and give him too much cushion to where if he does this one little quick juke move, we got to try and grab him with a forearm. You're not going to bring down Tommy Malott doing that. So, I mean, offensively, Montana State, what I will say is I feel bad that they have 4 running backs out, but I'm happy they have 4 running backs out. You better believe I am extremely happy that they do not have any running backs right now. Now, maybe that's going to change. Maybe they just haven't updated the roster and that I forgot his name, Summer? I think it's Summer. The freshman running back who had a hell of a performance against McNeese. Maybe he comes back, but I don't think so. From everything I've seen, he's now starting to be mobile again, and he'll probably be back in a few weeks. Don't think he'll be ready today. So I'm very happy because our run defense has been bad at the best. I mean, that's how you can kind of say it. We have not been a good running defensive team. We haven't been a good defensive running team since 2018. We were really good at stopping the run there. It's kind of fallen apart ever since. So we need to get back to that 2018, the 2010 way where we were just run it on us. We're going to hit you. Sure, we'll give up some first downs every now and then, but we're going to keep you out of the red zone. And if you're in the red zone, you're going to have a really tough time scoring. That's what we really need to do with this Montana State team, because Malott, if you just put him in a running back uniform, running back helmet, running back number, all of that jazz, he's legit. He is a very good runner, but I'm very happy they do not have Afonso. Very happy they do not have Summer. I will say that. We are not very good at stopping the run this week. Now, I'm glad we had a bye week. Maybe we learned that we just need to hit people square face to face. Stop doing these weird jello arm tackles. It's not working. But yeah, I mean, this roster for Montana State is definitely not as quick as Tennessee State. They are not as freak of athletes as Oregon. They are not as agile as Tennessee State. They are not as athletic as Oregon. This will be the least athletic team we have seen. That does not mean they're the worst. No, they would beat Tennessee State. They are more physical. They are more balanced. They are, I almost wanted to be like a dad and say more well-behaved. That's not what I was trying to say. What am I trying to say? It's not well-behaved. I'll think of it one day. Again, 14 hours of work today. It's been brutal. 6 days of work. But no, they play smart. Their coach, Vegan, is phenomenal. He schemes really well. I think Montana State is definitely a much better team than Tennessee State, but they do not have the athletes that we saw at Tennessee State. They do not have the speed that we saw at Tennessee State. So that makes me a little bit happy. That makes me a little bit, I don't want to say less worried, because they're still a much better team than Tennessee State, but I think we can match them speed-wise. I think we can match them, hopefully physically-wise, because they are a much more physical team than Tennessee State. And yeah, they're really well coached. Looking at our guys, Gunnar Talkington. A lot of people said he was going to suck. I said, I think he's going to be really solid and an All-American in the Big Sky, an all-conference player. I said, I think he's good for 3,000 plus yards and 30 touchdowns. Well, 2 games in, he has 7 touchdowns. He's averaging 3.5, and he's got 500 total yards. Yeah, I think he's on pace to do about what I said. Now, he doesn't have some of the intangibles that Eric has, right? Or Vernon Adams. He doesn't have the elusiveness. But what I will say is he is quicker than I remember. He's got legs. He wears those little shorts showing off those thighs. So I like it. He's still a gunslinger. He doesn't have the arm as an Eric Berrier, but he doesn't need it. He's still throwing down the field. I mean, 41 for 61. And he didn't play very good against Oregon, but I don't blame him for that. It's Oregon. But he was phenomenal against Tennessee State. Big Sky Player of the Week, 5 touchdowns, 400 yards. He had 80 on the ground. Yeah, he looked really good against Tennessee State. Looked okay at Oregon to bad, but he had 2 touchdowns, which I was pretty happy with. He seems to be a leader. He seems to have a comparable skill set, in my opinion, to Gage Gubrud, who was an underrated athlete. Gage Gubrud can run. Gunnar Talkington can run. He's fast. When he was running against Tennessee State, I was like, holy crap. I forgot how the wheels that this kid had, because when we watched him, every time he was coming in for Eric Berrier, it was a limited playbook. He didn't really throw the ball much. He didn't really scramble. It was more, pitch it. Don't do too much, because if you do too much and you get injured and Eric Berrier can't come in, we got no one. So just run an offense, run a few plays, run the ball, manage the clock. He's not managing the clock right now. This dude is a baller. He's ready to play. He's the next big quarterback in a lineage of quarterbacks. He probably has this season the toughest schedule that any of our quarterbacks have ever had. And that kind of sucks for him, right? Because if he had some of the schedules that we've had in the past, maybe he could put up probably not 5,000 yards like Gage, but he could put up 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. He's probably not going to do that with the schedule we have this year. It is brutal. But Gunnar Talkington, I like him. He's composed. That was kind of one of my biggest issues is not seeing him run the full playbook. How's he going to look if things aren't going right? How's he going to look running the offense and actually controlling it? I think we can only really validate the Tennessee State game. I don't want to put too much stock in Oregon, just like I don't put too much stock in Oregon State against Montana State. Is he looked really good against Tennessee State, and that is again a very fast defense. There was openings everywhere. I don't know what it was, but he was accurate. He missed a couple throws, nothing too drastic. He played good. He played with pizzazz. He was really fun to watch, and I'm wishing nothing but the best for Gunner. He's a 6-year senior. He's done his time. This is an opportunity to shine, and he sat behind amazing quarterbacks. And you would be naive to think he didn't pick up some things. He looks good. The running game's interesting this year, but at the same time, I don't think you can gauge it off of the 2 games we had. So Tennessee State, because there's some pundits saying, "Oh, Eastern Washington's not running the ball very well." Well, against Tennessee State, we didn't need to run. We were throwing anywhere we wanted. We were averaging a first down and pass. We were absolutely torching them. You'd have to check the stats. I could be wrong on that, on averaging a first down and pass, but we were torching them. We were doing really whatever we wanted through the air, and Gunner was still running. We didn't run that much with scripted RB plays. Then against Oregon, we ran better than BYU did, our ranked FBS team. So it is what it is. I don't think a lot of Big Sky teams would have done very well in the running department outside of maybe Weber. Probably it. Don't think anyone would have looked good against Oregon. So, yeah, I think in this game we'll probably see some more running. But what we saw with Montana State is McNeese did a really good job running, and then Oregon State was kind of throwing the ball wherever they wanted. So I think we need to be pretty balanced. Our wide receivers, we don't need to say much about them. Freddie Roberson, stud. Efton Chisholm, stud. These are 2 of probably the top 4 wide receivers in the Big Sky. We never lose talent in the wide receiver room. It seems to only get better. We got this new coming freshman like Jalen Green. He's huge, 6'5", like a Limu Jones style of body. Just needs to put on a little more weight. But yeah, man, we got speed. We got physicality. Efton Chisholm, he runs like Cooper Kupp in a sense. I'm not trying to compare him and say he's Cooper Kupp, but he runs like a Cooper Kupp. He's physical. He doesn't care what happens. He also has, in my opinion, the best hands we've seen since Cooper Kupp. I mean, against Tennessee State in that game-ending drive, 2 diving catches in a row. Only Efton Chisholm's catching that in the Big Sky. Those 2. Phenomenal. Roberson, go-to guy. He's always open. So, yeah, this will be a fun game. It's going to be one of those games where I think each team's weaknesses and strengths are the other team's strengths and weaknesses. So where Montana State is really good at, we struggle. They're really good at controlling the line of scrimmage, running the ball. We're really bad at defending the run right now. We're not getting to the quarterback as much as we should, and we're not defending the run. So that's what Montana State loves to do. That's not our greatest thing. We also have really struggled against dual threat quarterbacks in recent years. Well, as you look at Tommy Malot's stats, pretty dual threat, right? Bigger threat, in my opinion, on the ground than in the air, but he's pretty dual threat. So if we don't put a spy on him and can't get to him, it could be a long night. And then here's kind of where Montana State struggles. Well, they struggle throwing the ball. They just do. I think our DB group is pretty good. They'll give up a few big plays every now and then. Again, they did that with Tennessee State. The very first play of the game, blown coverage, touchdown, Tennessee State. They settled down. They got to the ball. They're picking them off. They're doing a really good job. We just couldn't stop the run. Okay, so that's our strength on our defensive side. Then I think their weakness on their defensive side is right now it's stopping the pass. I think it is. I think their DBs are solid, but they seem to lack a little bit of leadership on the defensive side. I mean, they lost Troy Anderson, who shout out to Troy Anderson for that blocked punt against the Rams. I mean, they almost beat the Rams at the very end. Cooper Kupp went off. Troy Anderson had a big day. It was a big sky frenzy. It was pretty cool to watch because I don't care about either team. I just want my players to do well. And I like Troy Anderson with his stupid little photo with the cat. I think he's a character. I think he's a beast. I think he's outside of like Cooper Kupp, probably the second best player the Big Sky's seen in 10 years. Something like that. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's a freak athlete. So they lost him. They lost Okada, who is a defensive line. He's a beast. They seem to not really scheme very well, and maybe it's just they have a younger defense. They don't know exactly where they're supposed to be yet. So our strength is throwing a couple screens out there, doing some RPO, spreading the ball around the field, and that's where we could excel. So how we're going to win this game is, I think, for one, we need to stop the wide receivers, punch them at the line of scrimmage, make Tommy Malott only run. Let's not have him dink and dive. If he does that, they're going to just drive down the field and then rush on us whenever they need to. We need to pop those wide receivers, make him run. And then we got to do a good job proving me wrong that we can tackle and stop the run. I think that's the only way we're going to beat this Montana State offense. And it's not an elite offense. But right now, we don't have an elite defense. Offensive side of the ball, we need to spread the field. We need to make them second guess. We need to figure out a way to implement the run. Make sure Gunner's protected. If we lose Gunner, probably a big drop off right now. I like some of the young talent. Kiko Vespers, I like him. I think he's about a year away from being able to really do something on the football field. So I'm happy he gets to sit under Gunner, who's, again, a 6-year senior. He knows the playbook better than anyone. He's knowledgeable. He sat behind 2 elite FCS quarterbacks. He learned a lot. Hopefully he can transfer some of that over to Kikoa. We just need to play our game. I mean, that's what it is. We need to throw the ball, get big plays, stretch the field, spread the field, start making these DBs really second guess everything. And then the last thing is, special teams. We've been hit and miss. So the one thing I'll say, and I'm really happy about this, I think we're really improved in the kicking department, like the returning and defensive. So, kick returns, I think we're solid. I think we got a good kick return team. And then I think the defensive side of the special teams doing really well compared to last year. I mean, we gave up big plays everywhere. Our punting has been phenomenal this year. I think our punting has been great. And then the field goal kicking, it's been hit and miss, right? But I think it's way better than it was last year. I think our special teams way improved compared to last year. But again, it's been a weird schedule. It's hard to validate it. This is the first game where I think we really get to see who's who in the Big Sky. Maybe both teams are down. Maybe both teams are up. Maybe both teams are underrated. Maybe one is. Maybe both are. I don't know. We're going to learn a lot from this game. It's in Cheney. Montana State has a history of not playing Eastern Washington really good until this last year. But this Montana State's been building something special for the last few seasons. And, I mean, they were a semifinal team in 2019, a championship team in 2021. They didn't play 2020. They've been building it the right way, and every single year they're getting a little bit better. If they were fully healthy, I'd be terrified. They are not. They're one of the most injured teams right now, and I'm happy we got them after a bye. We got to study what they were doing, watch all their film, prep, figure out how to tackle, control that line of scrimmage, do your best. They got a really aggressive front seven. Still, they always have decent lines. I think their line is a little undersized on the offensive side of the ball, but our defensive line's not very big either. So, I mean, it probably matches up pretty well against each other. Definitely not the biggest offensive line we'll see. Probably one of the smallest offensive lines we'll see all year. But they still play well. They know what they're supposed to do. They do a fantastic job sticking to their assignment. Their offensive line is solid. I mean, you don't run like they run, even with 4 RBs down, if you don't have a really good offensive line. So hopefully we can get to the quarterback, make him a lot uncomfortable. If he's uncomfortable, I think we have a really good shot. So, yeah, let me go. I got to pick Eastern Washington. So Eastern Washington wins 35-17. 35-31. My predictions, I've done like 8 different predictions on this game all week. 35-31 Eastern Washington gets the W, and then they get to go play Florida the week after. Ouch. Well, that's been everything. It's been a full hour of me talking to myself. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I got to go to bed. Uh, hopefully, this wasn't too bad of an episode. I know it wasn't great, but it is what it is. I appreciate you guys listening, giving feedback, all of that jazz. Go Eags. Let's pack the place. I know tickets are expensive. This is one of the best fan bases in the Big Sky. They're going to bring quite a bit of fans, just like Montana does. Not quite as much as Montana. They're going to bring their fan base. Let's pack this thing. Students are finally in. We haven't had students in until this last week. This is the first week we've had students. The Cheney Town should be booming. Last year, our attendance was horrible. The first game against Tennessee State, our attendance was horrible. Let's pack this thing. Let's make it look like the Eastern Washington atmospheres of the 2010 to 2019s. Let's figure it out. Let's do it. Let's not have another 2021 season where we're really struggling to put 5,000 fans in that stadium. We don't have a big stadium. We can pack it. So this is a big game. This sets the tone for the rest of the season. Win, lose, draw. Let's have a good time. Let's pack the stadium. All right. I'm out. That's it. Have a good rest of the week and go Eags. Boom.